Welcome to the Better Two podcast. I'm your host, Donna. Today's guest is Neville Keighley. Most of you guys are not going to know who that is until I say Belouis Some. He had some big hits in the 80s, Imagination, Round and Round from the Pretty in Pink soundtrack, and if you owned a Swatch and you watched MTV, there was an ad for Swatches with the song Some People. We talk about all of that and so much more. So tune in. Hi Neville, how are you doing today?
I'm very good. It's lovely to be here.
I'm happy you're here. And yes, I admit that, yeah, I was a fan back in the day and that imagination, yeah, my roommate, she was always into introducing new music and she had gotten your record and Diana
Fantastic.
did. And the song Imagination has been many a times a soundtrack for me writing adult scenes because I'm trying to be a
Yeah.
little bit political. But and then here's the funny thing. I never saw your more explicit video until recently. So I guess I had the right vibe the whole time when I was
Well, I
writing
was
this.
there before you, wasn't I? I
Yes.
mean, yeah. But it was that video. I mean, it's turned out to be a massive godsend for me. But it was um, it was very, if you remember, it was the early days of MTV, and it was very hard to get programmed anywhere. And you had to have a video, and every bar and every club in the world had a screen, a massive screen. One wall of the bar, even the Outback bar would have a screen and would be playing videos. It was the new video killed the radio star. This was the new thing, and and no one had pushed the boundaries on that. And so what they used to do is they used to do. The record companies would pay a lot of money for a video that they hope to get played on mainstream TV and MTV. But my publisher also managed Duran Duran.
I was gonna say Duran Duran did it.
Well, they did it with Girls on Film, but we sort of went, I think, a little bit
Oh
further.
yeah. Yeah.
And they didn't. And Paul said, "Listen, Imagination's got such a great feel to it. Um, it's a dance record," which was really ironic that I'd made a dance record because I was more of a sort of rocky act, and I sort of developed when I started working with these wonderful musicians in New York. But that's another story. And so it just felt right. It's essential record. I can't even speak. Essential record, Imagination. So the idea of doing the long format, and then because we never had a proper 7-inch video because it was rubbish, because everything had gone into filming this beautiful 6.5 minute extravaganza of sensual nudity basically. And but it got showed everywhere.
Well, and here's the thing, and you get to look back at yourself now and go, damn, my body looked good. You have that immortalized for
Absolutely.
yourself. We don't think about
Absolutely.
those things when we're younger. It's like, yeah, I can look back and go, wow, okay, I did actually look good, you know?
Listen, if it makes anyone feel better, I mean, I was always worried about that, but I must go on a diet. I must go on. And I look amazing. I'm so skinny. And and one of the things I'm coming to terms with now, being back, doing this again after 30 years or whatever, is the pain of looking at pictures of myself now and looking at a 65-year-old guy against this sort of like sex symbol from 40 years ago, and I'm coming to terms with it. This is what I look like. Get used to it. But it's painful.
It is, and I mean, there's, from a girl's point of view, back then, but when I was in high school, my mom would be like, you need to lose weight. Okay. And then so when I moved out with my friends, I dropped like 50 pounds.
Yeah.
And my mom I go home and she's like, you've lost too much weight.
Yeah, you can't win.
And
You
so when
can't
I look back,
win.
just like you, when I look back at those older pictures of me, I'm 57 now. When I look back at those pictures and I think I thought I was fat and I'm not, it's the mind trip that we do to
Yeah.
ourselves when we're younger. It's like, how the hell did we get there? You know?
Absolutely. And I think every generation does it. And everyone, my daughter's just I've got a 17-year-old, 13-year-old daughter. My daughter's just been saying to me, I want a bigger bottom. I'm like, what? I mean, I seem to remember when girls, does my bum look big in this? No. I mean, do you know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I
because
mean, okay, all right, okay, fine. But you
yeah,
don't say anything. You just go, you look lovely, sweetie, you know.
because yeah, it was back in the 80s. If you said, does my butt look big? It was like
Yeah,
that was like if a
yeah,
guy said that to you, it was like, oh, you're dead now. But things have changed. They want that, and that's the thing. I think while
yeah,
we had pressure back in the 80s to look a certain way, I think that's much higher now because even guys have to look even more so than back in the 80s.
yeah. And the other thing, of course, is you think about James Bond and Sean Connery.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, fit guys, and even our famous favorite actors and Hollywood stars, the fit ones. They weren't bulky and bulked out now, and everyone's gyms were for boxing. Do you
Hmm.
remember?
Hmm.
The only people who went to gyms were, gangster types and heavy duty and serious boxers. Um, Now, I mean, people go to the gym and they puff themselves out. I'm in a gym all week, you know. I quite like it, but that's not the point. The point is we've all our body change, our idea of everything's changed, hasn't it?
I have
Mm.
a friend who talks about because I had a male model on,
Yeah.
and he was very down to earth, and he's like, yeah, I only do that if I have a shoot coming up. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I'm like just. And so my friend says, "Oh, yeah, that's what I call drama and a headache. A guy that's got to be at the gym all the time, he's just going to be drama and a headache. He's not going to care about you. That's just drama and a headache." I'm like, okay.
It's true. It's true. It's true. Once you start getting obsessed with the gym, it's gym, 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 gym.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But
And no, no. I mean, I couldn't go to the gym if it wasn't for podcasts. I couldn't sit there and do it without listening to something.
well,
Uh,
and here's the thing: being a performer, going back on stage, going back on tour, you have to be in a certain amount of shape because you have to be able to sing and possibly, move unless you're going to be Robert Palmer and stand there with the microphone and not move.
and a
Um,
cigarette.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be
Yeah.
able to move, so your physical fitness is important.
I mean, I lost 20 kilos and I thought, Nev, if you're going to go back on stage, you're going to go back on fit. I mean, I'm not, I mean, I did it. And also I want to live longer. I
Right.
mean, so this is another thing. It's very boring for anyone listening to this. But the thing is that, yeah, I'm very aware that you've got to be looking, you've got to feel good and you've got to have the stamina to do it as well. That's the other thing.
Yeah,
Singing
because
is very tiring. So, yeah.
well, you have to make not only physical, you have to make sure that you have the lung power and your
Yeah.
voice strength because you can blow your voice easier now than way back then.
Yeah, no, I know. And I always remember I was telling you a story before we started, but another story. I remember meeting one of my first ever TV show, or maybe one of my first evers, and it was in Holland. I know it was in Holland. I can't remember why I know it was Holland, but it was in Holland, in Amsterdam. And David Cassidy was on. You remember
Yes,
the
yes.
Partridge, and he obviously anyone over a certain age, he was like the Harry Styles of the era, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And I was chatting to him, and he said, "No, no, can you stand a bit? Stand." I seem to remember him being very short as well, but maybe I'm wrong. And I said, "Yes, what's wrong?" He said, "Well, I've got to be careful I don't get a throat infection. I mustn't get a cold. I mustn't get a cold." And I thought, and by the way, at that stage, I was still at the stage where I drank my way through gigs, hangovers, whatever. It was the 80s, for
I
God's
was gonna
sake.
say it's the 80s.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, yes, yes, I'm very careful of my voice, smoking 40 Marlboro a day. And, uh, you know,
Hmm.
you know, but now, of course, I'm a bit like that.
But
Yeah.
at least it
Don't
wasn't
want a cold.
Camels you were smoking with no filter because there were some people that back in the day would smoke that and it's like,
Yeah. I mean, no, I mean, when I was at school, I would have smoked tree trunks, I mean, anything that I could, I mean, bits of old branch, anything you could
mhm.
get that, but those are, different times. Now I'd vape, I guess.
Well, and I think the thing is back then smoking was considered cool.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, bloody stupid, but you know, I mean, yeah, I mean, at least I was going down that path rather than all the other paths, the drugs and whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
I never really smoked pot. Sometimes I wish I'd smoked pot. I've never really, I know everyone smokes pot everywhere in the world. I'm probably the only person you've ever spoken to who's never smoked a joint. I've never done. Um, because in England, they used to smoke that gungy, it wasn't pot, it was ganja. So it used to make them all sleepy and, you know, laid back. And I've never been very laid back. So it was like, what's the point, you know?
well, and that's
With beer, of course.
no, I mean, no, this is the way this show goes. This show is
Oh,
more about just, I'm not, yes, we're going to talk about your music, but I'd rather get to know people as they are.
yeah.
And if they have great stories, then they have great stories. And that's the way this goes. I
Yeah.
mean, when I look at, for me personally, the few times I've been drunk in my life, I don't like feeling out of control. I don't like being that person. So
No.
yeah, I that's why it's like, and I saw my dad. My dad used to drink all the time. Yes, it was the 80s. And he would have these huge house parties in the late 70s and 80s. And here I am, a kid walking around going, okay, I don't really feel comfortable with this. So I think being around it, but but the funny thing is when I write my novels, yes, they're set in the 80s and yes, they're musicians. And yes, the first one I wrote is about a drugged out rock star.
Well, they were.
Hmm.
And I was never drunk. I wasn't drugged out, but I was certainly drunk. I mean, I don't like the word drunk because drunk always implies you are out of control.
Hmm.
I was, and I still drink, but not so much. I drink beers now. I've had to stop drinking wine, which I love, but it makes me put on so much weight. But I've always been a happy drunk. I don't like drunk, the word drunk, because I think drunk implies you're not
Into-
really.
Intoxicated.
Yeah, but I'm very happy. We call it in England, we call it pissed.
Okay.
I was a bit pissed last night, which means I've had a few drinks and I was very happy and jolly. So, um, drunk implies keeling over in the street and aggressive or something's gone wrong. Do you know what I mean? And
Or time traveling,
yeah,
where you're
and
sitting there, you pass out, and you open your eyes, and it's like everybody's moved.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that. I think it's managing your drinking, and so yeah, I've drunk every day for 40 years, and I love it. But not obviously now very moderately. But the worst thing, of course, is hangovers. You see, and that's one of the reasons I've had to stop. I can't take it any longer. The hangovers, I can't. I like getting up early, and I don't like the hangovers when you get to 60 are off the scale. It's 2 days. Well, I
I
don't know because I haven't had one for a couple of years, but I just know it's just horrible.
I can imagine as you age, it would be worse because I mean, it
30, they're bad.
yeah.
40, you think they're bad at 22, by the way. 30, if you've never drunk very much, 30, you think this is terrible. 40, you think this is awful. 50, you think I might as well die. And I don't, 60,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, okay. 60, you
yeah.
do. Anyway, it sounds like I've got a pretty debauched life, but
No, debauch, would you be you would be telling me how much cocaine you did in the 80s? That would be debauched, or the wild parties you went to in the 80s. Those things would be debauched.
do you know, I never did cocaine in the, I mean, I knew, I mean, everyone was doing it, but it wasn't, and in London, I mean, I saw it but I never did it because if you got caught, I mean, it's as simple as this, by the way, I never trusted drugs because I thought if I got caught, I'd lose my American visa. And um, I was very aware that if I had a criminal record for drugs, I'd never be able to come to America. And all the 10 years of work was down the drain.
Well, it
And
makes
it was as
sense.
simple as that.
It
As
makes
simple as that.
sense. It makes sense. I mean, I was at Live Aid. I did get to go to Live Aid in Philadelphia, and
Philadelphia.
in the crowd, people were
Yeah.
doing coke, and that was my first time. I was 17, first time sitting there going, "Wow, if I were a narc right now," because the whole thing was just say
Yeah.
no. I was just like, man, they could clean up right now. But yeah, the
But the
people in
thing,
front of us were doing coke.
and the thing about the Coke in the 80s, I mean, if I mean, Coke is one of those, it's not the same Coke anymore. It's
Mm-mm.
mixed up with all sorts of rubbish I mean, there's only so much Coke you can do in a crowd of 100,000 people in a stadium. But I mean, the Coke what worries me now is what's happened to recreational drugs. So, I'm trying to make sure my kids just are aware that it's not just coke, it's ketamine, it's MDMA, it's whatever you want to talk about. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but I just see, and in the States, kids
Oh yeah.
think they're taking one thing and boom, they're
When
taking something,
I think it
you
was
know.
1989, and mind you, I am grown now. I'm 20, 21, 22 almost. And my dad, I go down to New Orleans to see, I was actually down there for a show, a concert. And my dad decides he wants, because he has his own shop. He's like, come with me. I want to test drive a car. I need to talk to you.
Yeah,
Okay. Mind you, I am of age, legal age at this point.
yeah.
And he looks at me and goes, don't do drugs. I'm like, okay. He's like, because I've tried them all, just don't do them. This is the just say no talk from my dad. Don't do them.
Oh,
Okay. I've done them all. Okay. Fast forward quite a bit, and somebody informs me that my dad at one point had a Percocet addiction because he had a brick wall fall on him in the fire department.
right.
So I understand why he had that addiction. He never cleared that up. My dad always dropped information,
Oh,
but not the whole picture. So it's like, okay,
right.
I understand. I understand that.
Right.
But yeah, that's not really a just say no speech. It's not a drug speech. It's just, yeah, I've tried them all. Don't do them.
I mean, we all knew when you're growing up. I mean, people say don't do drugs, don't do drugs. I mean, I grew up terrified of heroin because, in the 70s, kids would die of heroin overdoses. Respectable friends of my mother's kids would just die because they'd had heroin or whatever in London in the 70s. And I guess then the 80s, coke kicked in, didn't it? I
Yeah.
guess it was. And but I was never really, and I didn't smoke pot at school. None of us smoked pot at school. We were very rare, I guess, with hindsight. But and of course, the States kids also smoked pot, I guess. When I got to New York, everyone was smoking pot and doing coke. But
It it
yeah,
was weird in high school. I graduated in 85, but it was weird because you could tell who the stoners were in school. The
yeah,
stoners had a certain look, certain requirements of clothes like suede boots with
like in
fringe.
the movies.
Yeah, I mean, it was just there was the clique. You knew who the stoners were, you knew who the jocks were, you knew who the heavy metal lovers were.
Yeah,
And
John
yeah,
Hughes, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, it was amusing because and no, just I'm not making light of this, but the funny thing about it is all the heavy metal dudes were wearing their Judas Priest shirts. And if I showed up, yes, I'm gonna say if I showed up in a Duran Duran t-shirt, I got ragged on because
Yeah,
Duran Duran was a bunch of F words, and you know what I
yeah,
mean. The
yeah.
slang term that used to be for
Oh
cigarettes over
yeah, of
there.
course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I would just look at them and go, no, they're not. And they would then go on, well, yeah, John can play bass, but the rest of them are, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And then fast forward, and we all know about Judas Priest. I just look at him and go, of
Yeah,
course, I don't know any of them now, but
yeah.
I'm just like, wow, well, you got fooled, didn't you? And I'm not disparaging Rob. I think it's great that he came out. But it's just funny because these
Isn't
guys
it
were so
funny?
macho and like, yeah, your band is just a bunch of, and it's like, really? Really?
My first, my first, when that first happened, because I mean, I do gigs, or doing gigs in America was funny because the kids had no idea um, that you'd have little girls in love with people who were so obviously gay to me. I knew were gay,
Mm,
and yet the persona, I guess it was quite sweet that no one was polluted with negative vibes and preconditioned ideas. But I always remember the thing about bands was there was a big rehearsal studio complex in London. It was pretty central London. We'd all be sent there to rehearse, and it had about 8 rehearsal studios. Every band, from the Rolling Stones down to me, and we'd all be sent there to rehearse for our tour, and they'd have 8 studios. It was very impressive, by the way, and very expensive. The record companies paid for it. And I always remember the first day I turned up there, the new band, the new signing, to rehearse with my new band for some gigs or some showcase. I can't remember what it was for. No, I know it was for a tour. Yeah. And my musicians had been around because I'm a solo artist. I had always had experienced musicians, so they sort of helped me out. But I always remember going in there, and in the cafe, there was Oh gosh, I mean, I tell you the names of the bands in a minute, but I'm making a metal clock. But there was the nastiest heavy metal band, and the queeniest Queen band, and the rock band, and the dance band, and the whatever band. Everyone's sitting at the same table having a great time. Oh, can I borrow your guitar strings? Can I do that? Can I do? I mean, the total interaction. And I always thought the punters have no idea that backstage, all these bands, we all work together. We
Hmm.
all interact. We use the same studios, the same producers, the same musicians. We know everything about each other. We're just into a different sort of genre of music. And I always thought, but it would probably ruin it for the fans, wouldn't it? Oh, the music journalist was just as stupid, by the way. Oh, you can't be in the same magazine as Kerrang as blah blah blah. Well, you can't do that because you're not that kind of music. Hang on, I've just been with them, you know.
Hmm.
Sorry, I'm ranting, but you
No,
know
you're
what I mean.
fine.
It's that craziness that everyone wants to compartmentalize everything, don't they? They want to do it with everything, don't they?
Well, and I think in the 80s we didn't do that so much because, you're talking, and I know you opened for like Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And
Yeah,
Frankie Goes to Hollywood at the time when they hit Relax, and they had some album covers that were controversial,
yeah.
but their music was just awesome. But if you looked at the bigger picture of who they were, they would have had a harder time today than they did back then
They
getting
were
a
gay
tour.
icons.
Oh,
They
I know.
Holly's fantastic. Lives around the corner. He's a great guy, but he isn't. He's very gay, and he
Hmm.
always was. I mean, look at the So that's what's so funny, I mean, um, and no, now with at the time people weren't officially aware that Freddie Mercury was gay.
Hmm.
In Queen, the big one that was certainly one of the biggest bands in the world, and certainly the biggest European band in the world. I mean, Queen in America for at one stage were, still are. I mean, I guess, but and George Michael, I'd known George since I first started. Everyone knew George was gay, and Elton. I mean,
Hmm.
isn't it?
Well, look, I
Who
remember
gives
being
a
a kid.
shit?
I
I just
remember
like,
I remember being a kid, and my mom's favorite musical guest or artist was Barry Manilow. And if,
yeah.
if Barry Manilow could have taken her away, she would have been a happy woman. And I look back and go, did you realize? Of course, she's long gone, and I can't ask her that. But it's like, did you not realize? How did you not realize? But I think even Liberace, they
Yeah,
put a blind eye to because
yeah.
he was just fabulous. It's like, really?
But I think, and I think I've seen this in real life. The stage persona is what people fall in love with,
Yeah.
not the real person. So they don't care. I mean, fans don't care. I mean, I've always thought there's a lot to be said for not meeting your favorite star, and I don't like it when people do meet them and say, "Oh, he was dead down to earth." That's an English expression. I don't, you know what I mean? He was such a nice guy. He was so down to earth. That's a very, I don't think you use that expression as, do you use that in America? I
Yeah.
can't
Down
remember.
to earth. We use
I'm
that
down to
expression. Yeah.
down to earth. There's nothing down to earth about going on stage in front of 100, 1,000, 10,000 people. There's nothing down to earth. There's nothing that can prepare you for that other than doing it. And so um, I don't know that meeting your favorite star, or I use the word star or icon, is really what you want. You just
I have met some of my favorite people, and here's the thing. You have to look, there's two things. I've met some of my favorite people, and the thing is, you have to look past that persona because if they are in rock star mode, I'm going to
yeah,
guarantee you they're going to be arrogant asses.
yeah,
If you meet them when they're more just, and okay, there's two rules here though. You
yeah,
can't run up to them and go, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." You can't do that because I'm sorry, it's not going to play well. You look like a
yeah.
you scare me. You have to be real. You have to treat them real. And yeah, sitting on my desk, I haven't never done this on the podcast, but Nick Grudge drew this for me
Ah,
while we were hanging out at a bar talking.
he's
So
he's a nice guy, Nick.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean, we were talking, and the thing is, we didn't really talk about the music. We
no,
talked about life, and that's the
yeah,
one thing. And the interesting story is Simon was also there. I was with a friend, And this girl walked in and she's like, oh my God, Simon, I want a picture with you. I've never had a picture with you. And Simon looked at her and says, I've met you before several times over and you've gotten a
Ah,
picture. And she took the picture and I'm in the background. Somebody sent it to me.
she's playing it.
And
Yeah,
Simon looks pissed.
yeah,
He's like, and I mean, it's like, don't think sometimes they will remember you, sometimes they won't, but don't think that you can pull that you're gonna ingratiate yourself into somebody if you're running in there going, oh my God, it may be the greatest moment of your life, but you're gonna be seen as a fan because you're treating them like the rock star. If you treat a person
yeah.
like a
That's a good
person,
point. There's a famous Madonna fan who goes to every concert. I know that she was ranting online. I can't remember where it was. Maybe it was whatever it was. It was not Instagram, it was somewhere. She's famous for saying, "Oh, I can't believe Madonna dissed me." And Madonna comes out of a show or something, and she's going, "Madonna, Madonna, Madonna," and Madonna just walks past her and ignores her, and she's really angry with Madonna. And I'm thinking, look, Madonna has a reputation, she has her moments, but you got to give the poor woman a break. If she's coming out and the cameras are going and you know, you
mhm,
can't expect her to go, oh, yeah, there you are. We have, interacted three times in the past. And so I think I quite like that aura of the star uh, you know, you try and be nice to everyone all the time, but if you're in stage mode or you're thinking about how you're going to pull something off, it's not always so easy to be
no.
accommodating.
No, and the other thing is too is that people lose track of, like that moment. She could have had something awful happen before that event. You
Yeah,
don't know what's going on in her personal
yeah,
life. She may have gotten the worst news in the world,
yeah,
and you have no grace for them. A celebrity, according to some, is supposed to be always on, and you're always supposed to be just happy and, oh my gosh, thank you for being here.
yeah.
That's wonderful, but you guys are human.
Well, and also, you are not imposing on them, but you are asking them to, you're invading their space in a sense. And so I guess, you know, what it's like. I mean, I think you've got to hope for
I've,
the
huh?
hope for the best.
Yes.
Hope that they're
Well,
in good mood.
I think what really, and I've talked about this before. When I was 17, I was in New Orleans to see the power station, and there was this issue where the fans were clamoring around. They were in an outdoor bar, and I don't know if you remember the power station. That was John and
Well,
Andy's
Tony
band.
Thompson played on
Yes,
my
yes,
records, so of
right. So I
course, yeah.
figured you knew.
And Bernard, yeah,
So, and Bernard produced the power station. So
yeah,
they're there. Michael DeBar is filling in, and there's all these girls outside the hotel bar, which is on the street, screaming. And I was looking in a window across the street it was a chain link fence, and I'm looking through the window. I'm like, I'm just ready to go. And the bodyguard shouts, they're people, not animals. And something about looking in that fence at that time just
yeah,
registered so well because it's like they deserve to have a drink. They gave you the entertainment you wanted. Now what are you doing?
yeah, yeah. You want more and you want more, but it's never enough.
No,
You never give the fans when you're at that level. The fans,
they were
if
rabid.
I mean, I've seen that myself. You do the picture, you do the autograph, and then just like the girl with Simon, um, it's happened to me very recently actually. And then before you know it, hang on, haven't I just spent 5 minutes being nice to you, chatting, engaging, and you're back again, like because you've seen a chink or a moment that you can get back in. Can I have a picture? Can I have another? Really? Are we doing more pictures and more? And I think that's taking advantage a little bit. But anyway, hey, listen,
Well,
it's great.
that was the thing about the girl with Simon. She took off. She disappeared just as quick as she was there. She took off, and it was just like,
Well, she was yeah, use the picture for something, wasn't she? Or,
oh yeah, yeah. But anyway, we're digressing.
Yeah,
So
we're
let's
moaning as well, and I don't like moaning. It's
well
all a positive vibe,
let's go back
you
to the
know.
past
Yeah.
to talk about the fact that you had Tony Thompson and Bernard Edwards work on your record, and you had part of Tears for Fears, curtain rolling work on your records. I mean, you had a powerhouse of people working with you. And so to score those people to do your records had to be a big deal back then.
You know, the Roland and Kurt thing is a bit silly, really, because I was it was right very at the beginning of our careers. I mean, and you know, I only went in my someone put it on my Wikipedia sort of like last year, and I'd forgotten, and of course. I haven't bumped into Kurt for a long time. I knew, you know, I used to bump into him in America, but I haven't been in the States for a while. And what happened is I went to school with a guy whose father uncle had a publishing company that signed Graduate, which was the original version of Roland and Kurt's band
Okay.
with Manny on drums, and they were all from Bath. And Bath is a very dinky, pretty town in Britain, in England. It's very posh, you know. It's very arty. It's where you'd want to live if you were culturally. It's nice. You know, the Romans discovered it. It's got Roman baths. It's got lots of theatres. It's very nice. Um, and there was a big music scene there in the 80s. A lot of bands came there. Peter Gabriel's from Bath, you know, just outside, and all that sort of thing. And Darren said to me, he said, "Listen, you've got to do some demos, and I'm a solo artist, right? So we need some musos. Well, Roland and Kurt will do the demo." So I went down a couple of times, um, and actually, yeah, I think one of the songs I did actually demo was Imagination. I demoed Imagination several times, and I actually recorded it a couple of times, but I'd forgotten about that as well. And we did do the first version of Imagination, and I think a couple of other songs, and with Roland and Kurt, anyway, you know. But I'd met them anyway in London as young band Graduate, and they'd had a song out called Ever Met a Day, and I think it'd been a minor hit, and then they disbanded, and then they became
Tears for
Tears
Fears.
for Fears, and you know, that's what happened there. But that was not a big. I mean, we just talked about it. It was not a big part of my formative years. What happened was I realized. I mean, I was a solo artist. After 5 years, it wasn't working just turning up at record companies, because if you're a solo artist, they you know, you're pigeonholed as you know, in those days there was no Mac to record. You were either playing on guitar, so you were folk, or what else was I wasn't. I was more of a rock band, but I wasn't a rock band because I didn't have one. So I put a band together, and then I started doing showcases around London and playing around London, and then I eventually actually very quickly then got my recording contract. And my publishing was with the Barbiero, who at the time were Duran Duran, so they were very powerful. And that's what happened. So I went in to start recording my album in London with great musicians, but the album was rubbish. It just didn't work. And a record company, Parlophone EMI, were fantastic, which is Capitol in the States, and they were great. But I knew I was pushing my luck here, because I was recording a lot and it wasn't working. And I knew the record company, I didn't really have a producer. The producer had a drug issue, and he kept on disappearing. And so I was on my own with an engineer, and we did no direction. And so eventually someone said, well, we must do a remix and put a single out. We got these guys in America who've just done Talks, It's My Life. And, you know, obviously I listened to it. I thought, it's amazing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, right, they can do a song of yours. And so I said, you know, can I go? Yeah, you go. So I went to New York, and that's where I met Steve Thompson and Michael Barbiero. And so what happened? They just started out, they were engineers, and he was a DJ on Long Island. I'm just giving you the story. You can cut it if you want, you know.
Oh no,
And
continue.
and and so Steve said to me, we got on really well. I loved it, and I loved New York. It was like I arrived there, like everyone, when you first arrive in the States, it's like wow, and everything, and you know, and everyone was so lovely, and creatively, it was amazing, New York. In one weekend, I did more work than I'd managed in 6 months in London, and such a pool of musicians, and everyone was around, and everyone was so positive. In London, they're like, anyway. So and I fed off that. And so I said at the end of the weekend, I said, Steve, what do you do? I really need to reproduce some of my tracks, redo them. Are you up for it? I mean, he said, I really want to be a producer, but I need an artist to produce because I'm not a producer, I'm a DJ. And this is, so I said, well, if I can arrange it somehow in London to get permission, for them to let me do a couple of tracks with you, can you sort of put some musos together here? If we sort of all blag each other, we might be able to pull this one off. So I went back to London and I said to the guys, I've got this amazing producer and he can get me Chic and he can get me, the Borneo Horns and he can get me everyone to work on my record. It's going to be amazing. We can do this and we can do that. And they were like, oh, and it was like my last chance. They were like, oh, just do it. So I came back and I recorded Imagination. But I was probably, and I also, the budget came through and I knew I couldn't. It was the early day of faxes, and this is absolutely true. And I remember the fax budget, it came through on the fax at the publishers and it said $34,000 for, and I crossed out one of the zeros. So I gave the record company 3,400 and came to New York. And luckily, by the time the bill came in, I'd been back to London with Imagination and said, there's your hit,
And it
and got
was.
away with it. And I got away with it. But I'm not sure how many more chances I would have had, if you know what I mean. And then, of course, I kept on coming back and re-recorded the album. And that was, wonderful. I loved it. It
Well,
was so wonderful.
and then I mean you had the Swatch commercial for some people. Yes, it was your song, but when Swatch picked that up and you had the commercial, that was on MTV in heavy rotation a lot.
Yeah, that was it was very early days for it was by the way, the genuine purists thought it was terrible, the idea of having anything associated with promotion, especially something as fun as a revolution in watches. I have to remind everyone that before the mid 80s, if you had a watch, it was usually given to you on your 18th birthday by your grandfather or uncle or whatever. It never worked and it was, and broke down and was, and cost a lot of money or was a family heirloom or whatever, or you didn't have a watch. There were no mobile phones. No one knew what the time was. So it was fun. What swatches were $20? And they were there were thousands of different designs and they were fun and they were accurate and they were waterproof and they so I thought they were just new and exciting and whatever and Steve Rexschnaffer from Swatch was a great, really cool guy, and he was mates with my manager Danny in New York, and they said, listen, do you want to do this? I said, yeah, absolutely. And Danny had done I think it was Coca-Cola with Duran Duran. I always mustn't offend Pepsi or offend Coca. I can't remember which one. It wasn't me anyway. I don't care. Anyway, one of them.
It
He'd
was
done that.
Coke. It was
It was
Coke.
Coke, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And that was a revolutionary thing as well. And he'd also he'd done something with the Who, because I ended up being co-managed by Bill Curbishley, the Who's manager, and so it was, I think we were at the forefront of this product placement and whatever. And it was great. And Swatch bunged a whole load of money into me playing live. So I'm up for it. I couldn't play live in America without their money and with an English band. So I loved being a Swatch ambassador for a couple of years. It was fantastic.
What I find,
And
go ahead.
sorry,
No,
it
no,
makes me really happy. I'm very proud of it.
no, I was gonna say what I find funny is you getting so much guff about that when, you know, yes, I'm aware I'm a fan of Duran. What I find funny is if you go back into the archives of Duran, they had merchandise in the 80s in Japan, like
Yeah,
Duran Duran batteries. There was a Kiwi liquor commercial where their heads are
yeah.
super big on little bodies and the girls are crying. So it's funny that you got so much guff about that. But overseas, even Arnold Schwarzenegger had like a liquor ad. I mean, all the ads over there were just in Japan were over the top.
Do you remember the Lost in Translation movie about the whiskey advert?
Yeah.
That was, you know, there were times were changing. I mean, that was a bit later on, but fundamentally it's the same thing. But the purists were like, how could you do this? Everyone was going to Japan to do ads. But I tell you what, there was a very famous PR lady in London because I always, my first hit record was my dance. I mean, America was the first people who picked up on me in the States, right? And also some of the European countries, Italy and Scandinavia. England, they didn't want to know because who is this guy who's got white hair? He's a pretty boy and he's recording with our really favorite musicians. How dare he? And who does he think he is? And he's got a name we can't pronounce. And they wouldn't play my records. I mean, they hated me. The music press hated me. The promoters still hate me in the UK, and because they don't understand. I mean, the audience is fantastic, but you see, Belouis Some solo artist. What is he? I don't fit into any genre. I never have done. I wish I did. I don't know. I've tried. Where do you want me? I'll go there. But that it doesn't work. When I did opening for Queen on the Magic Tour, which was the biggest tour of the whole decade in Europe. I mean, it was stadiums. Nebworth was 140,000 plus. I mean, it was, I mean, the audience was great. Queen were great. Great. I mean, Freddie Mercury and Queen gave me the gig, but the promoters were like, "Oh, well, why is he there?" And I always remember Freddie going, "Fuck off. We want him. He's great." And then, and there's a very famous PR lady in the 80s. I won't mention her name. And I remember she was having a dinner, and I happened to know some people at the dinner. This was about 85, 86. And she was absolutely outraged at me having the Swatch thing in the States and tried to persuade them. He'd been out anyway already. She said, "Well, what do you want him for?" I mean, and she's PR, right? And I'd already done the Frankie Goes to Hollywood tour. Why do you? And she was instrumental and part of it all. And she was outraged at Belouis Some. Who is he? Why is he doing it? It's amazing how enlightened people are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I've just ranted, but
No,
it
you're fine.
drives me insane. But it hasn't changed.
No.
I'm back now after 35 years, and I'm out there, and the audiences are fantastic. I'm really enjoying it in the UK because I was going to tour in America last year, and then Mike got cancer, but from the alarm, and
Yeah.
it came back, and so it had to be cancelled. So I'm now going out, as you know, in a couple of weeks, and so I came back here and said, "Well, I'd like to play over here, please." And promoters were like, "Really? You're running out of acts, mate. They're dying. We're at 60s and 70s, and you're still. I don't fit a genre. What genre would you like me to fit?" No, the kids are great. And half my audiences are young, and which is really encouraging. But they don't have a problem with Belouis Some, or isn't it bizarre that the industry is so up its own arse?
Some things never change. I mean,
It doesn't.
that's the
Yeah.
sad thing. Some things never
Yeah.
ever change. When I
Audiences are great. People are great. It's the industry.
The
Yeah.
gatekeepers.
Yeah.
And you think at times we've moved past the gatekeepers. And with social media and doing things like this,
Yeah.
you can move past that. But sometimes you're just never going to win that approval. No matter how much and how hard you try, you will
Yeah.
never get that approval. And I mean, it's simple for me. It's like when I asked my dad, I'm like, "Are you proud of me?" This was like when I was in my 30s. He goes, "What does it matter if I'm proud of you?" All right. So recently we were texting and I said and I was telling him about doing the podcast and writing, my books and stuff. And he's like, "I'm really proud of you."
Oh,
I'm like,
but
okay, where'd this come from? But we'll take it.
it
It's
matters.
weird because
It
sometimes
matters.
that shift will happen and other times,
It matters. But I am fascinated because I also don't think people, I'm saying my age, understand social media. I mean, I'm on social media all the time, right? And I can't say I'm not trying to be cool. I'm not trying to be a kid, and I'm not trying, but I'm on it because I think it's amazing. It's a free way of promoting yourself that I wish existed 40 years ago, when you had to get a PR person, and you had to, as look, we're doing this for God's
hmm
sake. It's great. It didn't exist. And and yet I'm looking at promoters who are not on, they've all got an Instagram account, they don't post. They've got a Facebook page, they don't post. They've got Twitter, which they look at football results. I mean, I'm beside myself with frustration at the gatekeepers. Whereas the actual marketplace is fantastically fluid and moving and really good. But the people, I mean, the people, I'm really I've got it in really for for I don't know I mean, I'm really angry with promoters in this country. Sorry, I just can't understand that. You can have no, just amazes me the small-mindedness that still exists.
Well,
So
I mean, you were talking about 40 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to do this. And it's like I can look back
yeah,
and think of myself with my roommate listening to the record, and it's like never in a million years would I thought one day I'm going to be sitting here talking to you. It's one of those really surreal
it's
moments
incredible.
because yeah,
Yeah,
because and yes,
and like,
I still have my
yeah, I was going to
12-inch
say,
vinyls.
oh, fantastic. I mean, the thing is that, and we couldn't afford to buy so many records. So
Yeah,
you could only afford to be fans of so many artists because you couldn't, it was a limited number because you couldn't afford it. I mean, my daughter and my other kids that I know and young people I know, they know every song from every era. They don't really know who they are by, and they don't know the backstory like we used to, but they know the music.
right.
So there's no, so I wish we could try and explain this to the people who are the gatekeepers, as you say, because what they don't understand is there's no band loyalty with young people. It's whether they like a track, it's whether they like the fashion, it's whether like, I mean, I mean, Sabrina Carpenter, okay, she's now, I mean, probably most people know three or four songs, max. I mean, Taylor Swift is probably the exception, but there are very few artists where people know the whole story, but everyone knows all the songs that are coming out, or anything that's trending.
We don't have Ray and I had talked about this because Ray
Yeah,
actually I interviewed Ray.
yeah,
And we talked about the fact that there's no fandom anymore. I mean, yes,
yeah.
Taylor Swift has it, but in general, there's not the
She's
fandom.
unique.
Yeah. There's not the
Yeah,
fandom that we used to have back in the 80s that you were a Durrani, you were this,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you never had
Absolutely.
you don't have that anymore unless you're a Swiftie. But other people don't have those things anymore. And
No.
it's kind of
But
surreal.
you're as good as your current song, and if the kids don't like it, I say use the kids very generally, but if the audience doesn't like it, then it ain't happening. And I mean, and also without a social media presence, I'm amazed at the amount of actors I have it in for actors who have a big success, and it seems to be actresses really, especially European ones who have a big success, make a great movie, and I'm not on social media. It's an intrusion in my life. Huh? You spent years trying to have a hit movie, and you're not on Instagram, or you're not, okay, pushing it further, TikTok or whatever. I mean, are you mad? I mean, what are you doing this for? What did you go through the pain all those years?
I mean,
If you're not,
you don't have the machine that you used to. I mean, before if you got a book deal, a record deal,
yeah,
you had a whole PR team promoting you. Now, a lot of the times you still have to promote yourself. Even if you get that deal,
yeah.
you're still going to have to be out there hoofing it.
And what's the book team, the promotion team going to say? Get on your social media, please,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
be real. But hey, listen, at least we're a couple of people who are not in our teams have discovered it. I mean, I'm loving
Yeah,
it.
I don't know that I could handle. I'm glad I grew up when I did because the 80s, I was part of that generation that, yes, we still had the phone that you could slam down, as we talked about earlier. And you still, if you wanted to leave the house,
Yeah,
nobody could find you. Nobody could find you. You could go off and
yeah.
nobody could find you. You could go find your friend, and if they weren't there, you weren't going out. Now it's like, oh, wait, I know exactly where you are. I'll call you. And so you don't have that escape, I guess.
Have you tried calling? some, I mean, again, I don't want to start with younger people, older people. It's very interesting when you call offices now that have, email, call us, here is our email
Oh yeah.
address, got complaints and whatever, and you actually call the number. They're like really, really awkward with you. I mean, not rude, but people don't like speaking anymore. They
No.
want to email and they want to text and they want to.
I, I'm one
Um,
I'm one of those people that I will still talk on the phone to my friends, and I prefer to talk to most of my friends on the phone
yeah.
because that's how I grew up. You get a Here's the thing with text messages and
Oh, it's
everything, that can be
time.
so misconstrued at times. If
Yeah.
somebody just does not, if the inflection is not there, you're
Yeah.
missing something. And even when you think about when you used to get a letter in the mail, it's like, or the post, you would could see by their handwriting what was going on. There was the feeling to it. And we've lost that. And I'm not ragging
Yeah.
on the technology because technology can be great, but there's parts where it's like we've lost some genuine things.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, I lost my ability to spell. I mean,
yes.
that's gone because of Google. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, I love once I start talking to someone on the phone, I chat, 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 chat. But you're absolutely right. It's so easy to email, and I hate those text conversations going backwards and forwards. Drive me mad. Oh, for God's sake, just give me a call, will you? You know,
It'd be a lot quicker.
you're a lot quicker than this hiding behind a text message, which is very boring. But I do think social media, and I love it when people say, "Oh, we're going to ban children from having telephones or using social media." Oh yeah, you're dreaming, mate. I mean, it ain't going anywhere. It's social media is fantastic. I mean, I love it. I mean, I'm it's opened up a whole world and information, so much information, so much knowledge, and I'm really loving it. So I'm loving it from promoting myself.
The only thing, and I don't know about over there, but over here they've quit teaching critical thinking in the schools. And the thing about
Oh,
that
you've
is,
hang on, you've frozen. Oh my gosh, my battery. I'm moving. I'm moving. Hang on, it's me.
okay,
I'm going to move.
okay,
You've yeah, hang on. I'm going to move, and hopefully you can still see me. I'm going to
I
plug
still
you in.
see you. I still see you. It's all good.
Okay, hang on. Because there we are. There we are. Can you? Is it all good now? Let
It's
me
all
know.
good. I can still see you. We're all good.
Okay, good. Yeah,
What I was going to say is the only thing here is like they've quit teaching critical thinking. So the kids that are on the phone constantly that are learning things, they don't have the necessary, and I know some people are getting mad at me. Sometimes they don't have the presence of mind to be able to disseminate what is real and what is not real. And that's the only issue that I have
yeah.
with it. If nobody's actually helping them know right from wrong and what is the right thing to do.
Yes, I guess. I guess. Well, that's down to the teachers, isn't it? I don't. I mean, I'm wondering where's that better. I'm just wondering. That better? I don't know. But yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, I think there are lots of pitfalls with social media, and I'm not. I mean, I think it's responsible for so many terrible things. But overall,
Oh
I
yeah,
think you
overall
know.
it's great, and
Yeah.
and like I said, I don't mean to disparage it at all,
Yeah.
but I do want to ask you two things. What was
Yeah.
it like to? I mean, we talked about the Queen touring with Queen a little bit. What was it like being around Freddie Mercury and the guys from Queen? I mean, that had to be something major as far as being an up and coming artist. And take aside the promoters and stuff, what was it like to actually be around them all the time and working in that kind of atmosphere and being
Well,
on the stage with them
I
or
don't want to
with them?
sound. I don't want to sound blasé, but um, it was it's a very small industry.
Hmm.
The music industry, the actual the artist side of it. Once you
Right.
get to a certain, you start working in recording studios in London. Within a couple of weeks, you start meeting. Oh wow, lots of famous musicians because they're coming down to play on your records for God's sake. And then, of course, when I went to New York, and after my first recording section with Carlos Alomar and obviously got to know Carlos and Tony Thompson and Bernard Edwards from Chic, and then Robin Clark, and then all the backing vocals, and then the Borneo horns, and then Jimmy Malin and Earl Slick comes in, and by the end of my first week in New York, I'd sort of met so many people, and they all bring other people down, and then you go out for a drink afterwards, and then you meet so and so, and then you meet, and then there's Mick Jagger, and then there's whatever. So by this stage, you're pretty immersed in it.
Hmm.
No, you're immersed in a respectful way.
Right.
You're not larging it and going, "Ooh, look at me," but you're a fellow artist and treated with respect, and I obviously treat them with the awe and respect that they deserve. But they're actually not. You're having a drink with someone in a bar. You're having a drink with someone in
Right.
a bar, and so this was 84, 85, and then I did a lot of live stuff in the UK and a lot of TV programs where you get to meet people. I always remember, a wonderful run-in with Robert Plant on an aeroplane and with Peanuts and a Peanut fight and I always remember Robert, who's the most amazing guy in the world, who's a gentleman as well, Robert Plant, and saying to me, if it wasn't for the fact my daughter had a crush on you, I'd punch your lights. I mean, and we became very friendly. And I think, Bill started managing, he used to come down the studio. But I mean, it's a small,
Right.
as I said about the rehearsal studio, you're all sort of in the same, you're all trying to, there's a wonderful line that my A&R guy said to me, Dave Ambrose, just before my first record came out. He said, huh. He said, well, it better be good because in the UK this week, you're up against 80 singles on Friday. Two are going to be hits, and you need to get radio play. And in the UK, you needed Radio 1. Two are going to get Radio 1 out of that 80. And he said, one of them might be Paul McCartney. Oh, and I was like, oh, okay. So the bottom line is we're all in the same boat. No matter how big you are, you need, you need, you need you need the next record to be good, you
Right.
know. Yeah, and so there's an element of that, I think, and so we all have respect, but we all respect the new artists. I mean, same way as I'm telling you about the wonderful things I'm seeing on social media. I mean, I'm seeing things on TikTok. I just think, wow, they're so talented. So by the time I'd sort of got to the stage where I knew about the Queen Stadium tour. The rest of the world didn't, but I knew about it because they were on the same label as me, and I'd heard word, and I thought, wow, if I could get to open for them, because I was so ambitious. I still am ambitious, even though I'm, old, and I thought I'll get this. So I set about trying to persuade them that I could get it, and so I'd met the guys at a managing directors convention in Scotland, in Glen Eagles, at a dinner. And I followed them back to their hotel room at about midnight with a bottle and suggested that we had a drink. I mean, they were all drinking and whatever,
Yeah.
but Freddie wasn't there. And so I'd sort of met the guys in Roger and, Brian and John. They were nice guys, but I didn't have the gig. I got the gig because I did a Montreux MTV Music Festival, and Freddie was watching on TV, and this is a true story. He arrived at the launch party for the tour, a big grand party to launch to the world. All the press were there, hundreds of bands were there because we'd all done this TV show, and I'd gone out around the world. And Freddie, I was summoned to meet Freddie, me, and I was having a drink with, a lot of other in excess and whatever. And they said, oh, God, you're in trouble. So I went off to meet Freddie. And he said, you're the only one here I want for my tour. You're having my tour. You
Wow.
were amazing tonight. And so I'm blowing my own trumpet. That's why I got the tour. And I always remember the managing director of EMI going, oh, please, Freddie, we've spent so much money on him. Do you have to? Does he have to do it? And Freddie was going, he's doing my tour. That's how I got the tour.
Well, see,
It was,
and to be fair, I had to ask that because I have a friend who she just loves Freddie Mercury. In fact, her dog is named Freddie, or Mercury, excuse me. Her dog is named
yeah.
Mercury, and she just loves Queen and she loves Freddie. And I just felt I needed to ask that for her.
They he was amazing. He was an incredible, charismatic, I mean, very gentle, absolute superstar. I mean, and the other guys in the band were they were so close. That's the thing about that's what I found amazing about the band. The four of them were really close, and it was definitely a family. I mean, you weren't, but Freddie was, they definitely came as a band. They weren't, and they were very close, which I thought was lovely, and that was very obvious as well. Even though Freddie was the only one there that night, I think. No, they were all there that night, but for some reason I ended up with Freddie. Um, in fact, I've got pictures where I'm with them all, but I can't remember because we were all pissed and pissed, drunk, not
I know, I
drunk,
know, I know.
and uh, no, they were lovely guys. They were really lovely. They worked as a team. It wasn't a decision that Freddie had obviously made on his own. He'd obviously said to the others, "Darlings, he's doing my."
Hmm.
He was very camp, and he was incredibly funny, very charismatic, and so that's how that happened, which was a great story. I've obviously dined out on that story because it was so I was so surprised because I was sort of like that night had been such an amazing night, and there must have been 20 or 30 bands, and we were having a most amazing time, and most of the bands were on the way up, so it was 3 nights in, we were going crazy, so and this was the sort of, I think I had to get up at 5 the next morning and go. I think I did a show the next day for Swatch at the
Okay.
Beacon Theatre in New York.
And
That's
NXS would be on their way up because that would have been right
They were
before
definitely,
that was right
well,
before Kick. I saw NXS in 1986 with Listen Like Thieves. So that was right
you know
before.
what? In Excess had two number ones in records in America and hadn't had a hit in UK. And we were all doing, this must have been 86, early 86, before they'd had the hits in the UK. It
Right.
happened in the UK after, again, the same old thing about the UK. Who do they think they are? They're not a real rock band, they're Australian. I mean, I remember the attitude when they were number one in America.
Hmm.
And we were doing the same tour route, alternate nights. One night they would do it, the next night we would do it. But Michael became a really good friend, and they were all great guys. It's very sad what happened, but you know, it's just one of those rock and roll tragedies, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I was fortunate enough when we saw them in 86 to get to meet Michael. So that was pretty cool.
he was
Uh,
another. I was going to say just about Freddie. My experience, and you asked about meeting people. There is something about the really big. Um, this. I hate the word star, but um, the let's say star for the sake of the conversation, that they do have an aura.
mhm,
David Bowie had an aura, and
mhm.
Mick Jagger has an aura. Elton has it. When they walk in a room, Freddie, when they walk in a room, there's something. They don't have to do anything.
No.
I mean, George Michael had it. They don't have to do anything. They just. I'm only saying the English ones because. But I've met American artists the same stature. It's the same thing. There's an aura.
Hmm.
Um, you know. You know.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about the tour with Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Now, that tour to me would have been most likely a really wild ride compared to the Queen tour. I would think the Frankie tour would have been a little bit outlandish at times.
Well, Queen was, I mean, corporate and massive, and we dipped in and out, and it was. I wasn't on. I dipped in for the shows, and I had my own tours going on at the same time. It
Right.
wasn't like a tour. It was, you know, Paris, and then 4 days later it was somewhere else, and then it was not like Frankie where it's next night, next night, next night. Frankie. Now in Europe at the time, Frankie Goes to Hollywood were the biggest band in the world. The Relax was the biggest selling, single, and deservedly of all time. And they were massive. In the States, they'd done a tour and they were pretty big, but they behaved so badly on the first tour that people were pretty weary of them on the second tour. Um, and they made the big mistake that English bands make is that they were like they are in real life. They were like their persona on stage, and unfortunately, American journalists and radio stations don't get that. They don't realize that these people are real. Punk bands do spit at old ladies in the street, and they do, you know, um, So a lot of radio stations and journalists wouldn't interview them on the second tour. So I did them all,
Okay.
the support group, which I was really happy. So I was just, everyone was arriving in town and there was an interview to be had. So I nabbed it. I was really happy to work. Um, and I think that they really, I mean, I'm friends with Holly now. I bump into him occasionally, but you know, um, I think they made that terrible mistake of believing that it was going to last forever if they didn't, you know. Whereas American bands tend to, they've, the other thing with English bands is a lot of them haven't played live as much as the American bands, and that's a problem, And American bands have, I mean, I'd done 50 gigs in every toilet in the UK before I got a recording deal, um, contrary to what people believe. And Frankie Goes to Hollywood hadn't. I mean, they went in the studio and they made a great record and went on tour.
Well, the first record they put out was great. It was,
Yeah.
and then the second record, I own it, but it was not as good.
No.
It was not as good. And the interesting thing, you were talking about the, English press there. Sig Sig Sputnik was put, for a
Yeah.
brief, short blink of an eye, that was like the band, the
Yeah.
band. I can't even remember what they played. I remember what they looked like.
Love Missile,
Yeah, there it
something.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I
Yeah.
mean, everybody was like, oh, they're the best thing. They were gone within, like I said, a blink of the eye. Nobody remembered them. But the
Well, the
press hyped them for sure.
well, the singer's girlfriend was Magenta, the PR woman. I mean, I mean, I mean, they're all lovely people. And Neil, in fact, the guitarist from Zig Zig Sputnik, has played on a couple of my records and is a dear friend. And uh, but I mean, their name's bigger than any of the music, if you know what I
Hmm.
mean.
Hmm. And then the question is, does anybody even remember Six Six Sputnik now, other than the people that were?
Yeah, the reason I know about Zig Zig Sputnik is because, as I say, Neil's a friend, but he's playing all the time with Glenn Matlock and Mark Armand and everyone. But the rest of them, I think, have just all, You're right. I mean, the English press love her, and they it's a story for them. There's no, and of course the problem is that the real old rock and roll magazines don't exist anymore because there was no crossover. So they wouldn't talk about the ones that were successful, and the ones mainstream wouldn't talk about the ones that were, oh, it's really boring. The bottom line is a band's got to be out there playing. And Frankie Goes to Hollywood didn't have a fan base. They had a pop fan base. They didn't have you
Full
know,
fan base.
yeah, no. I think that would be my view. And of course, because of the different characters involved,
Yeah.
Holly was very different from the four boys in the band.
Hmm. I could
So it
talk
was
to you.
great. The answer to your question, it was great. And there's a very funny story because I had all musicians with me, session musicians, young session musicians playing with me from England, and so I'm a solo artist. I don't have a band, but I love great musicians. There's nothing I love more than in the world. And the great thing about being a solo artist is you can dip into really talented people and then move on. So I loved it. I fed off these people, always have done, and so I always got the best thing. I never had to rely on some dodgy guitarist that I grew up with. So I so I remember about 4 or 5 dates into the tour. There's two stories. I'd made an album in New York. I'd been in New York for about a year, and I'd got to know it. And I had the Swatch thing, and I had my manager in New York, and I remember there's two things, right? And the first thing was they were very excited because they were going to a party when we got to New York, which was about 8 dates in, and it was at Area, if you remember Area, the
Hmm.
coolest club in the world, and we're going to a party and everyone's going to be there. And I remember the conversation and Holly, and we're going to a party tonight, whatever. Because anyway, that they all bowl up to the party in New York at the Area, and everyone's there, and it's my party.
Oh,
The support group. I remember that was the first thing, and I just thought that was quite funny.
oh, it's great.
And the second thing, I mean, I didn't tell them, but when they got there, they were like, "What are you doing?" Well, it's mine. And uh, the second thing is about halfway through the tour, the guys who I was really friendly with by this stage, we were getting drunk every night, we were having a great time. And they said to me, one of them said to me, "Listen," they all came over and they said, because they're from Liverpool, right? I'm
Hmm.
from London. And they said, now listen, it's true. You, we're having an argument. You didn't go to a private school, did you? You've got to understand how schooling works in the UK, right? You have the old established private schools, and most people don't go to them. Some people go to private schools. It's some people go and they don't pay so much. They get a bursary. Some people, it's not like Eton and Harrow. The ones you hear of in the movies.
Yeah.
There's about 3% of the kids go to private schools, and you go for different reasons. I went to a private school.
So did
So so they came over and they said they're from Liverpool, right? And they're great guys, and they said, he says you went to a private school, and I said you don't. He didn't, and there's no way you go for a private school because he just wouldn't be in a private school because he just couldn't believe that anyone in a band could ever have gone to a private school. And I said, guys, of course I went to a private school. Uh, and by the way, so did most of the music industry. And they were so shocked. I mean, I said, real awakening, the harsh realities of life, which is true, by the way. In those days, most of the industry had gone to a private school and
Yeah.
pretended.
I went to private school, most private school or religious school, and except
Yeah,
for my last 2 years in school, then I went to
yeah,
a public high school.
yeah. I'm sure it's the same in the States. I was lucky enough to get a place at a private school, so of course you're going to go, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, that's life.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom sent me to an all-girl Catholic school my first 2 years in high school.
And look, you've turned into a perfect all-girl Catholic.
No, not even close. But but I mean, by the time when we moved to Shreveport, she's like, "So, do you want to go to Catholic school or get her public school?" I'm like, "I want to go to public school. There's boys there. I want to, you know,
Yeah.
I don't want to do the Catholic girls' school because honestly, there was a lot of brattiness at the Catholic school. So yeah, I just don't. But anyway, I
Anyway, I
we
don't like religious schools. I think they can be, but I mean, the standard of education's better. So, you know, we're,
sometimes, not always, not always.
anyway, we don't want to get onto education.
No, no, I've talked your ear off. It's already been over an hour. I could sit here and talk to you a lot longer. Is there anything that we did not discuss that you want to add besides that fact that you are going on tour this summer with the Vapors, who I talked to earlier today?
Ah, right. Yeah, no, I've never met the Vapors, but I've been. I know China Crisis. I know Big Country. I've never met Flock of Seagulls. Who else do I know on the? I'm getting to know Peter Godwin and his songs. I've never met him. Who else is on the lineup?
I
I don't
don't.
know Josie Cotton. Um, uh, I can't remember who else is. General Public. I think I've done something with some of them. Um, the funny thing was when I did a summer festival a couple of years ago, just before COVID kicked in. That was my sort of first time back, and I was seeing people I hadn't seen for 30 years. It was like you saw them yesterday. The
Oh,
music
I'm sure.
industry, it's like riding a bicycle, and I was a bit outraged that I get guys, you haven't seen me for 30 years. It's a bit more than a high nev, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I'm really excited about the Lost Ages. I think the lineup for this year, Rob has done an amazing job. I mean, you look at the lineup,
It's a
you know.
great lineup. The one thing I'm disappointed about is the fact that you guys are not playing anywhere near Chicago. That is my disappointment.
Well, ring, ask Rob. I'm up for it.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I might not be able to go anyway because I will be undergoing chemo treatment. So,
Oh no, I mean, is it you're having chemo though?
yeah,
For
I had cancer surgery beginning of March, and I've talked about this on here before. And I start chemo most likely next week. It's only going to be 6 treatments. It's not that big a deal, but it'll be until like mid-July. So I will.
you
You
might not
guys,
want to be going to a gig.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
well, I wish you the best of
Thank
luck. It
you.
sounds like it's under control, and
Yeah.
I wish you every success and
Yeah, I didn't mean to end the podcast on that, but it was disappointing when I'm looking at the dates, especially, I'm gonna be honest, yeah, when I saw that you were touring with Jay, I'm like, and they're not coming anywhere near here either. So yeah, because I like Gene Loves Jezebel too. That was another big, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I did a gig with them before Christmas in London, and I love the set. It was great. I've never heard their music really before, and it was great to listen to. And he's a real charismatic performer, isn't he?
Hmm.
Very, you know, so it's
Well,
going to be.
I want to
Uh,
thank you for coming on the show.
thank you for having me. It's been lovely talking to you. I mean, just I don't know what we've talked about, but we've talked about a lot.
Yes, we have. Talking to Neville was like a trip down memory lane. And yeah, I could sit there and think it's kind of like when I talk to Lamal. I remember, listening to the record. I remember Diana bringing it back in and thinking, okay, let's listen. And yes, as I was saying in the beginning of the thing, I have a playlist. As a writer, I have a playlist that has songs to write, sex scenes to. And during that, Imagination is one of those songs. And it always has been because there's a sexiness, there's a sensual quality to it. And the video, if you go and check out the explicit version of the video, you'll see that yes, it's all there, and it makes sense knowing that he was managed by the Duran management, because Duran not only did Girls on Film, they also had the chauffeur, which also had nudity in it. But both were tame in comparison to what his video is. And it's not that it was overtly bad, because, you know, when you look at the music videos that have gotten banned over time, Justify My Love back in the early 90s, that got banned, and that was a big controversy. I remember the first time I could see it was on ABC News Nightline, because they wouldn't show it until after 11 p.m. Yeah, okay, whatever. But that was the only time you could watch it. And at that point, MTV was not showing it at all. I think they started showing it at a certain point after hours. But yeah, it was just a big deal. And it was like there wasn't really anything to be too controversial. But yet then it was deemed that. But Madonna was all about creating that controversy. The book Sex came out at the same time. So stepping back with Neville and some of the stories, the peanut fight with Robert Plant, those things, they're amusing. And his struggle on how to make this record happen, knowing that he's almost out of a chance. And the one thing I didn't detail, which I was going to say and I didn't, was the fact that when he's talking about Queen and hearing about the show, he's sitting there saying, I'm going to get that gig. I'm going to get that gig. And the truth of the matter is, with like Live Aid, I sat there that weekend, when they announced that they were going to do it the week before. I sat there with my friend and I'm like, we're going to Live Aid. We're going to Live Aid. Okay, but all these things have to line up, just like with that tour. Everything had to line up, but we believe so much in it. And yeah, I ended up getting to go. And that changed my life, because that person, Diana, that I mentioned, I would not have known her had I not gone to Live Aid, because she was the other contest winner's guest. So both of us were guests of the winner. Both of us did the work to help win it. And that's how we met and became friends. So you have to manifest and create, and then you have to look at the connections of what it brings to you. Because knowing that he would get that gig ended up opening doors for him to be able to work and do more things with that tour. Now, we did not talk about what happened between 1993 after his last record came out and him coming back into it. But I think we had a lot of value in the conversation anyway, because sometimes it's better to focus on what we're doing outside, the things that he constantly talked about, the fact that there are gatekeepers and blocks. We deal with that even on a regular basis. Even as a normal person, we run up across blocks and gatekeepers that won't allow us to move forward. Sometimes that, if you look at it energetically, that's to protect us. And sometimes, we're given what we can handle. And if we can handle success, then we can move forward. If we can't, if we're not ready yet, then there's going to be a block there, and we have to prepare ourselves to be ready. So, on that note, I appreciate you for listening. I'd like to thank Rich Side from Third Ear Audio for doing the sound. I'd like to thank Fast Susie for the intro and outro music. And I'd like to thank Neville for coming on the show and giving a great conversation. But most importantly, I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. And no matter when you're watching or listening, morning, noon, or night, I really, really do appreciate you. And, well, I'll catch you next time, guys. Bye.